this session. We call it the future of Groovy in a positive sense. It's an open discussion, and we have a hangout on the air running from the laptop up there. So that was one of the reasons I wanted the microphone, to have a better chance that people can actually hear what we say. I think I would start out trying to make a fair question for you guys. Oh, this is supposed to. There we go. Huh? Yes, let me start by introducing the panel. We have Cedric Champeau, Gradle Incorporated. Sorry about that. I'm still getting used to it. I know it's been years, but I'm getting used to new stuff.
No worries.
We have Andres Alray.
No, you're mistaken. I'm not Andres.
Bravissimo. Well, we have Guillaume Laporte, who I've been so lucky to meet now almost 9 years ago and start this very interesting conference series. He is now, is that official?
Yeah, next Monday, starting at Google.
He starts at Google on Monday. It's not working?
No, that's not.
It's working.
He will be working for Google next Monday.
Yeah. And Jochen Theodoro works for Canoe as well. And Jennifer Spring works for Object Partners in the United States. And it's also one of the Great Ladies founder. So back to trying to do a first question. The move from Gradle, adapting software. It's interesting.
So in spite of Gradle Inc., the future is bright for Groovy.
I think so too, actually.
So
the question is, what can we do to drive Groovy forward? Because apparently, Gradle is not interested, so. No, they just put their focus elsewhere at the moment. So, how do we drive Groovy forward? Ken had it on his keynote this morning, and I found that very interesting. Because we can all sit here and enjoy being Groovy programmers, but we should actually go out there and tell everybody else why it's so awesome, right?
Contribute?
Yes, contribute is one thing. And sometimes it seems a bit scary, but yeah.
There are areas, so the GR8 plugin, which is something the enterprise needs, in spite of having a IntelliJ IDEA-free access for development. And you can even use it for Rails as well. The ultimate edition might be better for that. But yeah, contributing to some using the GR8 plugin, helping with like kind of new work around the grammar. We've got some new contributors there. Yeah, continuing to write Gradle plugins in Groovy and Gradle PL script in Groovy as well. Sure, Gradle Inc. It's still important.
I want to add that contribution does not necessarily mean to code. Contribution means also to participate in discussions, helping new users, maybe fixing some documentation, but already helping reviewing pull requests would be a great help.
Yeah, exactly. I've been asked oftentimes, how do you get into open source? And just looking at open ticket and go to this, the list of the steps, if there are any list of the steps. So when you submit one ticket, please give us more information of what can we do to reproduce a problem. So if you can go, you're able to reproduce a problem, just add a new comment and say, this thing is still alive. If it's not reproducible, add a comment and say, this thing apparently was fixed sometime, so please just close it. That's really, really helpful. And the other thing that I highly encourage you is to participate in events such as Hackathon. If you were last night hacking with everybody else, it's just tons of fun. And we eventually just made a tiny contribution to a Groovy related project, in the case of GR8Conf, but it could be to any kind of project on this open source. And I'm really happy. This is the 7th time, I believe, we have had Hackathon.
Yes.
Running on GR8Conf. And we always get this emotion and this vibe of everybody really having fun, making sure there is at least one feature, one bug that gets added to a Groovy-based project.
Yes, so I wanted just to ask you something. How many people in the room use IntelliJ? Okay, how many use Eclipse? Okay, so that's the problem.
No one.
The problem is that at those conferences that we are, nobody is using Eclipse because we're Groovy users. Groovy users mostly choose their IDE when they can. What happens is that in large companies, that's not the case. So Eclipse support for me is super important. And the problem is exactly there. In that conference, nobody's going to ever develop Eclipse. And if I want to say something about the future of Groovy, I love Groovy. T-shirt, it's not happening yet.
Yes.
Not yet. If you want really to survive, we absolutely need decent IP support. And we need it. We have it in IntelliJ, despite all the movement of Gravel, etc. They are still doing some work to support more features of Groovy. If you look at the community edition of IntelliJ, there are some commits to improve. Typically, support for the X2, for compile static, etc. So they are still moving forward in that area. The problem for me is not IntelliJ. The problem is Eclipse, nothing else. If we don't have a decent IDE support in Eclipse, Groovy is going to die. That's the key for the future of Groovy, in my mind. And second aspect, maybe we can talk about that too. The second one, probably Johan would agree, is Java support. That's huge.
So I've never officially committed to Groovy, so I feel
You're getting to write the IDs.
But I can speak to other things that you can do as well. So mainly on documentation, on trading, on evangelizing Groovy in general, on bringing Groovy support to other things. So one thing I've been working on recently is Spring REST docs, so that's mostly Spring stuff. But I got the opportunity to bring in a bunch of Groovy examples to that project and contribute that back and spread the word about Groovy in that community. There are lots of other things you can do too.
And actually, one thing you are doing is coming to events like this, because if you didn't come to events like this, who else would get a chance to promote Groovy Rails? And events like Reach and G3 Summit all take place in November in Florida, GR8Conf US, GR8Conf India. Those are the conference that is technically focused on the content related to Groovy Rails. And I think those are important as well, not to polish my glory. It's just it is important to come to these events. It's important to write blogs about Groovy Rails and Gravel. Griffin.
The Groovy was not pleased.
I'll try to. So yeah.
So Griffin was
Yeah.
Regarding the Eclipse problem, I just wanted to want to get your thoughts on current state of the Eclipse, and anyway, regardless whether you look at Groovy support as a we will, for example, problems with Eclipse support when today. IBM have reduced their investment in Eclipse significantly. The overall ecosystem is relatively stagnant the way it was before, and things continue to move forward. And without the investments that Eclipse needs, there's also going to be a turning point at some point, whether that's Java 9 or whether, I don't know what will that be, where somebody is going to have to come up and invest in Eclipse. So I guess the question is there, is it critical to invest in Eclipse now, not knowing whether the future of Eclipse itself is secure, or a wait and see approach to see what happens to Eclipse? But
So my understanding of the situation with regard to the Groovy plugin specifically for Eclipse. So I agree with your description of the Eclipse ecosystem in general, and especially with regards to Java 9, it's going to be a nightmare. But yeah, I don't think there is so much work to do to make it possible to combine Groovy and Eclipse, because the latest version that was supported is, I think, Groovy 2.4.3, which is not that far away. And we have a set of patches apparently that can be done to the compiler to produce the plugin. So mostly the investment to me is about getting the knowledge of that plugin, how it is written, and how the patch are applied to the Groovy compiler. So I wouldn't necessarily add more features, and there are not so many new features in any case in Groovy. So yeah, I think we can do it. We can do it. At least maintain the existing plugins.
so I know whilst we were at Little, there was some interest in getting those patches that the applied to the Groovy compiler, which necessitates them having to release a new plugin each Groovy update. Would it be possible still to have those patches? I mean, if those patches were actually applied to Groovy itself, or those patches so automatic that it would be impossible to modify Groovy to include those patches in it, and therefore not have to release a new version of Eclipse when a new version of Groovy comes out.
Yeah, so actually some of the patches have already been integrated. There are some others which are not integrated, and I think that's probably the ones which depend on the Eclipse classes and so on, because that would mean we have a dependency on the Eclipse, on big Eclipse jobs. So I think we are kind of in the middle of the road. I think most, if not all, of the Groovy specific changes without not requiring at least the Eclipse dependencies are in. We can probably check with the MD and decremented essentially. But otherwise, the other one, which are tied to Eclipse, we cannot really integrate them easily. So that's why we're in the middle of the road there.
Okay. One more question, sorry. One of the major problems right now with Groovy as well is this is when you use it with Gradle even, is that there's no incremental compilation. So any change to any small file in a large code base leads to the entire code base being recompiled instead of just the changes. So one of the benefits of the Eclipse extensions that they added is that you can get incremental compiler using the Eclipse compiler. So would that be a possibility to solve that problem potentially by actually deciding, and also kind of a handout to the Eclipse community saying that we're going to use the Eclipse compiler as the default group compiler, or is that not possible?
Yeah, well, I can't don't say much about that, but I certainly hope that wouldn't be the default compiler. So it would be great to have this kind of incremental compilation, but to be honest, to depend on the GDT, it doesn't get released often. It's just a big release every single time at June 22nd, for those who have been tracked. But most of you guys use IntelliJ, so it's sad that we're having this discussion. So we're caring about the state of the community, the state about the Groovy clips, but none here inside the user. So we only need this IDE support for people that are coming new to the community, because those are already inside rely on different set of tools, whether they're better or not, that's up to discussion. So the thing that I see here, the fundamental problem is not that we have the patches and there's no one that can apply them. Of course, we can find somewhere, but they need to be maintained also. It's not just the fact that you can have Groovy up to date with the latest versions or maybe future versions, but you also have to add new capabilities to the Groovy editor or Groovy support that may be related to new versions of the clips because of something, or maybe it's better DSL support for Gradle or Rails or any other kind of DSL. So these features cannot happen. This cannot happen if we got somebody here within the community that really cares deeply about it. Sadly, we only have a handful of people, and half of them just left because people don't know under cares about those things.
I want to add that there are patches to the Groovy compiler, and we probably can abstract the parts that are interacting with the clips, so still integrate them without pulling in all of Eclipse and JDT. But it has also patches on JDT. That's not the original JDT that is used. And with every new JDT version, you will have to see if those patches still work and adapt them, and you get really into maintainability out here.
And just perhaps you could also mention your work in progress on a new joint compiler that you talked about this morning at the conference. Perhaps incremental compilation has to be factored in the design somehow. And also seeing how, and also seeing what Gradle can do with that to get the incremental compilation in.
Yeah, just so, at least to me, there is one good reason why most of the compilers do not include incremental compilation. You don't have an incremental compiler for Java, you don't have an incremental compiler for Groovy, and there are good reasons for that. For Groovy, typically we have hasty transformations, and we have global hasty transformations. So it means that when you compile something, it depends on what you have in class path. So if you compile a class, you have a global hasty transformation compile class path, it will be applied. Then you do something else, you compile to a different class path, it won't be applied because it's not a class path anymore. So there are some states that need to be stored somewhere when you compile to be able to recognize that your class path has changed, that you have to store some data in the local database, whatever. So this is where the build tool is important. So this is where Gradle can help, because Gradle has infrastructure to store all that information, and that you compile incrementally, just because it will remember that that class was compiled with that class path, etc., etc. So we compile everything if you change the global history transformation, typically. So the Groovy compiler cannot do it, just because it doesn't have that knowledge. The build tool has that knowledge. So yeah.
incremental compilation to me has to be done on the tool side, not on the compiler side.
And when we talk about incremental compilation in Eclipse, that's not on the class level, that's like on the method level. So you recompile only part of a class. That's really, there's a bit not helping anymore at that level that you really need to drive a full structure like an IDE to get this. But I want to mention that even if I'm now trying to make a new joint compiler, this will not help the Eclipse plugin at all, because it's not, the Groovy Eclipse compiler is the heart of the Eclipse plugin, and it doesn't really help there. Yeah, I mean, for things like, refactoring and so on, it's important that it's tied to JDT, so that JDT knows that, okay, you're changing this method, oh yeah, but it's used in the Java class, so somehow there's not much we can do there, besides having a strong, at least for the Eclipse one, to have a strong tie into the Eclipse libraries, JDT and so on.
So also something I wanted to add regarding to integrating the Eclipse compiler into the Groovy distribution is that we have a problem today with the Groovy infrastructure, is that the compiler and the runtime are mixed into a single volume. So if you bundle the Groovy Eclipse compiler to Groovy, you will have to do it in Groovy core. That would be a problem. And then, it would explode the size of the artifact that you would have to bring when you use Groovy in production. So I don't know the size exactly of the JDT plus all the classes that we need for Eclipse, but that would be huge. So it would come from 4 megabytes basically today with the Groovy core to 50 megabytes, and then it would be the size of the Kotlin compiler. So the difference is that the Kotlin compiler is not required at runtime. You just have the Kotlin compiler. So one of the things that we have to do, and this is also important for Android support, is to actually separate the compiler from the runtime and have a clear separation of the two, because you don't need to be able to compile classes at runtime for Android devices. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, actually, one more thing I want to add for the Eclipse plugin is I didn't use Eclipse for quite a while, so I cannot talk about it from experience. But according to our keynote this morning, the Groovy part works more or less good, but the grades part is not so well supported. So that's the biggest issue there, it seems. And I think I remember at the end, shortly before people ditched us, or during the period, that we were working on support for grade 3, and I thought it was starting to work, but apparently it's not working. I don't know really from personal experience.
She would just walk.
Do I have to?
You're not using it either, right?
No. Yeah, so certainly the GGTS or whatever the Rails part is, I think it works with Rails 2 and all Rails 3. So there are some updates to the Rails side that need to be done. Right now, we don't have the Eclipse resources in-house on the Rails team to do that. So hopefully maybe they'll change. But they're back in demand for not in this audience.
Yeah.
But yes, there's work to be done there.
I guess it's time to open for questions. So we just addressed the biggest elephant in the room. Are there any small elements? You're compiling for Eclipse.
gonna change the tone to something more fun and bright instead of depressing. So I know that there is Antler 4 migration going on. So what's the status of that? And for the community, will it perhaps open more opportunities for contributions? And if yes, then what does that mean?
So I'm trying to help the guys that do the actual transformation. I would want to say from the old Until 2.7 grammar to the Until 4 grammar. And of course, I'm encouraging some rewrites because there are some cases in the grammar which are, well, basically, I think the grammar tries to check too many things, and I think they should be moved in the data phase and to simplify everything and to make the parser itself a bit faster. So even if it doesn't accept, even if it accepts a code that is not fully legal yet, you can still check those cases later on and instead have a less complicated parser. And as far as I know, they are pretty far already. Last I did here was them having trouble with command chains. And well, but they are, it seems to be quite healthy and going on. So it's a separate project on GitHub right now. Well, they forked the Groovy repository and are working on the Until 4 branch. And this work is not yet going back to our Until 4 branch, which they are based off. But it will in the future, and if somebody wants to contribute there, I certainly can sort out the exact name of the project because I don't remember it right now from heart. But if you ask on the mailing list, and I think it's only 2 guys working on that right now, which is more than usual on the grammar. It was mostly either Paul or me working on the grammar in the past. So, but I think they will appreciate additional contributors. You're welcome.
And what's interesting is that those 2 guys are actually not Groovy committers, external contributors. So it's nice to see that it's not just the old guard of Groovy committers who are working on that.
But they have been involved with the project for quite a while.
Yeah, contributing small changes, patching, fixes, and so on. And one of them was there last year. I'm not sure his name was there last year when we actually kind of launched this new, not Daniel, the other one, I forget his first name. We started discussing this, and I encouraged him because he had already Until knowledge. And we thought, oh yeah, perhaps I could help. And that's at GR8Conf that we relaunched that initiative, basically. So yeah, it's been running for a year. Daniel joined in the process, and there's certainly still quite a bit of work to do, I guess. But you know, it's in the open on their brands that we have to share the link off. So, getting there slowly.
Yeah, just on the goodness part of changing the grammar, we're going probably to include typically the documentation and the AST. So if you know about Groovy today, sucks just because it's a different parser that extracts the comments from your code. It's mostly based on the good old regular expressions. So it kind of works. Kind of doesn't work. And yeah, just having that would be awesome, just because we would have exactly the same. And maybe you could rely on that for some list transformation and do some copy of comments from one method to the other. It's really powerful.
The goal is to actually be able to run any standard document on Groovy Java, which means you should be able to run ASCII document on your Groovy source code. That's the final goal. That could be a nice bonus. There's a question over there.
I want to ask if there are some plans to support Java 9, or if there are some work that is being done, or do you plan to do something to support all the new things in Java 9?
Yeah, so apparently I started the discussion. So I think there was a thread that is probably more or less six months here, 6 months old now, and I had asked a question to the community and I didn't get a lot of feedback. So that's interesting to have your feedback. So yes, there is some work being done to support Groovy on Java 9, but today it's mostly running on Java 9 and making sure that you can execute Groovy code on Jigsaw. But we don't have any work going on to support modules or to have Groovy being itself a Jigsaw module. That's a challenge of itself, and probably to me, the challenge is backwards compatibility. It's probably impossible to achieve with the current infrastructure, both of Groovy and Jigsaw. So just to give you an example of the problems in Jigsaw and Java 9, and that's probably why it's going to break your applications too. You cannot have two modules that have the same packages. It is forbidden, right? So if you take what we did for Groovy 2 in the modular organization, we split Groovy into different modules, but for binary backwards compatibility reasons, we didn't change the classes. So you have classes in Groovy Util that live in Groovy Core and maybe in Groovy XML. Yeah, they should have been different packages in the first place, but they're effectively not. So it means that if you wanted to have a Groovy Core Jigsaw module and a Groovy XML Jigsaw module, it wouldn't work just because we would have the same packages in the two. So this is a big issue. And given all the problems that we have with that, and given the grammar rewrite, given the invoke dynamic backend of Groovy that is barely used, how many people in the room use the invoke dynamic version of Groovy? You do? Wow. Congratulations. So yeah, personally, I would like to have more people using that because it's supposed to be faster, at least on Java 8. Yeah, Java 7 is probably not the case. But yeah,
Java 6 as a minimum.
Yeah, we use Java 6. So my opinion on that was that we have so many things to do, not so many people, so if we have to deal with backwards compatibility, if we have to maintain multiple branches of Groovy, it's going to be a nightmare. So since Java 9 is going to break all the applications, not just Groovy, let's just break Groovy and do a proper version that is Java 8 plus only, with right packages, a new mob, maybe.
So can I just come with a comment on that?
Yeah.
And my microphone ran out or so. Yeah, so one idea would to, I don't know if it's possible, make some kind of retrofit jar file that you could use for backward compatibility that would simply call into the new packages. I don't know if that would probably also be quite a piece of work, but then you can include that jar file if you want to maintain backward compatibility.
Actually, it might work because we're currently using jar to repackage some dependencies inside another jar so that we don't have external dependencies. But besides jar, not jar games, guys, so don't think about that. I'm actually thinking about that. No, we could probably use the shadow plugin in the Gradle build, the Groovy Gradle build, because what shadow allows you to do besides packaging everything in a single neatly jar, you can also relocate classes from one package to the other. So if we have a new package structure for JDK 8 or 9 going forward, and you want to have a compatibility jar, we could probably do something like that. But of course, it has to do with we have to plan ahead of that because we don't want to get into another ugly corner. But that's certainly doable.
The guy who did the last Jar release talking here. So, just a joke, but it is really me who did the last release for that one because it is kind of abandoned the project. Maybe time to move on to something new here. Have to take a look. But for Java 9, well, I tried. I made like a Sunday project a bit, which is trying to make the Groovy build run on JDK 9.6, and with the Groovy build, I mean especially the tests. Because you can already run Groovy programs on JDK 9. It will work. Groovy as a jar, there's no real module system, so to care of, well, some special things in there, but there are bug fixes for those already in there. So you can run Groovy programs on JDK 9. The problem starts when your Groovy program will become a module, and when the Groovy runtime becomes a module, because then new rules apply, and well, but we already have with the test some problem. Mostly we have to replace the usages of the Sun classes for well, yeah, we use Sun internal classes to initiate the Java compiler, for example. That's actually not so difficult to fix because there is now, since JDK 6 already, an API for that can be used. Gradle had to do the same thing. And another thing that seems not to be fixable is grabs, the grab annotation, downloading stuff, jars. And I mean, not in general, don't panic here. I'm talking only about when you want to use the system loader. Because the system loader used to be an URL class loader to which you can add new URLs to add jars, for example, and make them appear in the program. Now it's not such a class loader anymore. You cannot add jars anymore to that class loader, so you cannot make them appear anymore, and it will not work. So in the worst case, Graph will not find suitable class loader and cannot add the jar. And this is especially true for the system loader. There are many more challenges for JDK once you go to full-blown modules or even automatic modules. And you know, it's funny because just I think yesterday or the day before there was a big, well, not so big, but quite an interesting patch for review for Nashorn to use the layer system from modules, so to enable an appropriate use of the module system for those OpenJDK JavaScript things. And well, and then I look at that and I wonder, and I look at the Java doc of methods that are used that don't really have a description, and there's no documentation for that. You know, if you go to Java conferences, it's like JDK 9 may come tomorrow. If I look at that, it's like JDK 9 may come in a year. It doesn't feel ready at all to me. So there's maybe still some time, but it will definitely come and we will have to react to it.
I got a question about the lambdas in Java 8. There's a little difference between lambdas in Java and in the Groovy. What is the final outcome of that? Do we have any outcome?
So the new grammar, I think, already supports the lambda syntax. I think they made it. The problem is that the semantics are not always the same. There's a lengthy discussion on one Jira issue about that, which kind of broke up because I think the guy discussing with me didn't have time anymore. But I think we can find a solution so to simulate lambdas with our closures and still have compatible logic there for compatible semantics.
So just to follow up on that, if you're saying that eventually Groovy is going to support the Java 8 Lambda syntax, does that mean that you'll also have the restriction of effectively final variables? No, so it's still closures, even though it's called lambdas. Are they also going to support the method reference syntax and the rest of it? So when is this coming down?
In the future.
That's exactly where those small semantic differences are that we have to handle. They're very near to our method references, well, to our method references, but it's not quite the same. And well, you have a different syntax, so you can think about using a slightly different semantic there. But we have to figure that out a bit more and make it more smooth to really think. And if it's helping, and you know, we usually are not satisfied with just taking over a feature from Java. We usually tend to think about what makes sense in a Groovy orientation to extend here. And that might happen for that too, but it will need a bit more time. As I said, my discussion partner kind of vanished, so it's a bit stuck there right now. But I think it will come with the new grammar.
And just to add complexity to the complexity, the Groovy compiler is also compatible with the JDK 6, 7, 8. So if we support the lambda syntax to compile to the Java 6, what does it mean? If we add support for default methods and interfaces, what does it mean for older JDKs? Yeah, all those questions are totally open, and we don't have an answer yet.
We have been in a similar situation already when Java 5, when Java 5, so when Java 5 came around, because we were starting to support generics and many other things, but still had to run with Java 4 VMs, and well, Java 1.2, sorry, not Java 4. We used, what was it, a retro translator or retrofit or something like that tool. Retro translator. A retro we used at one time. Yeah, well, it's a bit history, so we have to get it out of our heads. But there are possibilities to solve it somehow. And one aspect we usually did there, so if you're going to use this in this feature, your code will not run on an older JVM, for example.
But just so you know, in the Java space, there's this project called Retro Lambda. Those are to compile Lambda expressions to be compiled with JDK 7 and even all the way to JDK 5 if you're so desperate. So yes, yeah, I know we still have customers running JDK 5 and they just migrated to JDK 5. I know. But I guess we could take, we could hire this information or know-how from Retro Lambda. Perhaps there's something there that we can learn and we can adapt to help our case. Hopefully.
I think the author is Demi Fora, and we have kind of contact to him because of sharing some history with Groovy and all, kind of. But yeah, there are certain possibilities.
Can I ask a question? I asked a question, now I'm asking one more because I just think it's very exciting to have Jen here because did you know that she will be studying Groovy on the Technical University of Copenhagen? Denmark, yeah. Not the same, but the same. Could you try and elaborate on what you will be doing? I think that would be very interesting.
And just before she answers, she will solve all the problems with.
In time. Great. right. So the idea was to kind of go back and learn some things I didn't do during undergrad, as well as spend some time working on Groovy in doing things that no employer is going to pay for. So some of these things are definitely on the wish list, and trying to create ties to the academic community. It was particularly frustrating when I first started doing this to realize that there is almost no published papers and research and exposure to Groovy in academia. And that's a good other community to tap into as far as getting more contributors into Groovy. The particular research group that I'm joining is roughly programming languages. The professor teaches on compilers, so all of this stuff is definitely very relevant. And I'm hoping, I can't do all of this personally, but I hopefully will have access to students who can help join.
So will you publish papers that use Groovy or handle Groovy?
That's the hope.
I'm looking forward to that very much because I know from the early days of Groovy, one part that was critic for Groovy was there is no, it doesn't come from the university. In my eyes, that was actually a benefit, especially considering like the history of languages like D, which had a big academic background and almost no user base. We care more about the user base and the practical aspects than the theory, yes, and having it in a clean and with a shape and with only one aspect. I mean, we are a multi-paradigmal language, so we can concentrate on one thing at a time. I mean, we have a too short attention span for that, simply.
Yeah, everyone I've talked to so far has been really excited about this because it's definitely the merging of my industry experience on how we use Groovy and all of the theory stuff that they've been doing, and my theory is really exciting to everyone talk to.
More questions? Here's one of them. Mac.
No, it's over. It's over. So I've noticed that there's been a lot of discussion about using Groovy for Android app development. So there's been a lot of talk, but are there any high-profile, high-visible Android app that's out there right now that's still using Groovy?
It's a great fun fact.
I'm more looking for 50 million downloads and up, but yes, okay.
Okay. There's something about New York Times using it before. Yeah,
Was it ever real?
It was. You know, they ran into runtime issues.
I don't think it's known if there is a high profile. I mean, there are apps for sure, but high profile apps, I mean, it's difficult to know because the apps don't tell you which language they are written in. So it can be written in Scala, it can be written in Java, so it's difficult to say. Yeah, I don't think that.
I think that there are actually some games written in Groovy that let libgdx stuff, because the guy who is responsible for that did some examples.
The Groovy Android plugin has activity, so there is people using the Groovy in Android. That's true.
So brief on Android, it's an announcement.
Actually, just Basilisk. No, yeah, you can run that's something like Griffin on Android. It's called Basilisk, and also on iOS, of course. Anyway, no, what I want to say is that we're coming back to what we were talking at the beginning. What Ken mentioned this morning, the perception and reality. We are victims of our own success. We have so much fun working with Groovy-based technologies that you simply do the work. We don't talk too much to the outside world. You see to other communities, other languages, but the other thing that they have is hype. You start to use it, and 1 year later, the whole team goes away because they completely hate the language and the tooling. But we don't. We stay here and we continue doing stuff. So what's our inner problem is that we don't talk so often to other people about the things that makes us be very productive. So it's a little bit of it's a challenge, I know, and perhaps it falls as a responsibility of each one of us, and to eventually, sometime, one day, every 2 or 3 months, let's say something great about Groovy, post something, just tweet, and eventually I hope this will find more people engaging, and eventually maybe somebody will say, yeah, sure, I wrote this big Android application that has lots and lots of customers, and hopefully paid customers, and it's making money. But we don't talk about these things.
I also want to add that maybe, you know, if your company is very interested in getting a certain bug fixed, they could think about maybe contacting one of the other companies that have some active Groovy developers and make a contract about fixing that. You should think about possibilities like that. I don't want to make advertisement, so I will not mention Peru here, for example. But I think, for example, just if you have a problem with grades and you want this and this fixed, then contact OCI and maybe work out some contract to work on that and pay OCI to fix this bug. There was also a suggestion on the mailing list to do a Kickstarter project for financing a Groovy developer. But I have to say, well, I have now 3 kids to feed and a wife as well. But she doesn't eat so much. But she likes shoes, so. That's German people. I'm not writing cliches, that's the truth. Anyway, so it's for when you are not a student, you cannot really build a life up on things like that. If you are able to live off, like, I don't know, €1,000 per month, then you can consider doing a Kickstarter project and collect a few thousand and then live several months of it and then do something entirely different. But most here we have family or have things to care of, and we cannot just do this one thing for a few months and then do something totally different. So that's why that's not working. That's why I suggested maybe going through some companies.
Just to close, and this is kind of related to the idea of every one of us can contribute to open source in one way or another. We're very happy if you join the mailing list and the discussions and contribute code, participate in hackathons and whatnot. This is a very active position to contribute back to open source. But the other one is to be passive about giving feedback on the stuff that you see that is not working properly or new features. But just like Jochen suggests, because it's very likely when you encounter a problem in an open source library or an open source project, and you reach to your manager, there are 2 avenues. One is that you have to fix the problem, but you keep the fix in-house, just because the manager thinks it's much of a hassle to open source this thing and whatnot, and just talk to other people outside of the community. And the other avenue that we have is give back to the community. So if we can reach out to the people that make the decisions, that have the money, that makes all the things go around in the company, and let them know that contributing to open source actually is more beneficial than keeping the patch internally, and when the new release comes in, you have to apply the patch again and again. So instead of being yourselves, the ones that have to maintain the software, just make sure this burden is on top of everybody in the community, and then it wouldn't be so much of a burden.
+1.
So this is actually a follow-up to what you brought up. So the concept of paying developer or paying companies to fix bugs, I mean, that's not new, right? So maybe to expand on that, so who currently is doing this? I mean, you did want to mention Canoe, so I will not mention Canoe. I assume OCI does this for Rails. Does anyone do this for Groovy? Like, for example, can you go to a company and says, I would like paid commercial Groovy support? Okay. So OCI does this? Okay.
We do this as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds really
All right. So that's at least 2 companies. All right.
Actually, one question.
I only one more thing to say. I think the best is to do what somebody did recently and just ask on the mailing list. This guy who was looking for somebody helping his team to learn more about the new Groovy features, actually not really a bug fix, but he asked on the mailing list, and he said many people replied to him, offering him support. And I think that will be the case too if you say, well, this is the bug I want to have fixed, and I would pay money for this, and which company would take it on. Then we can work out the details. I'm pretty sure there will be several that will announce the help.
Yeah, final question. Just a small question here. There's no doubt Groovy will survive. This is what this hour has been talking about. About Java itself, can we do something from the Groovy world to make Java survive better, so to speak? Is that something we could tell them to say, these things we think we should adapt them in Java core itself?
I think getting the else operator in Java would help a lot already. I think there's even a check for it.
Despite how many people have said this, Java is not dead. So do we need it? No, it's not dead yet, and it's very likely it won't be for a long time. Yeah, yes, exactly. So what does that make Groovy about? Is Groovy the new Java? And it's because Java is the new COBOL? So Groovy is the dynamic companion of Java. So as long as Java is there, Groovy will be there and vice versa. We have a very symbiotic relationship as opposed with other JVM languages. So what can we do to make Java better? Well, we encounter a problem in the Oracle JDK, Open JDK, or whatever JDK it is, and it doesn't work properly with Groovy. Just let these people know. That happened with previous version of Groovy, JDK8 update 11, they broke Groovy. And within 2 updates, they fixed it so that Groovy will work again. So this is the stuff that we can do. Just let them know that they did something wrong, apparently, in the JDK, and then just fix it.
To be true to myself, I have to say that if I had the manpower, I would actually explore using different VMs or something like that for Groovy, or making maybe how should I say a transpiler from of Groovy to Swift or something like that. I mean, Swift looks so much like Groovy anyway; it should be easy. I wouldn't bind myself too much to the JVM, though I don't have the resources, so it will stay there for at least as I'm concerned.
Groovy, the new ascender.
So one of my favorite future features of Java actually would be around not Java the language, but the JVM itself. And I think there's a jet for that. It's about having possibility to improve the JIT for different languages than Java, because today the JIT is the inline compiler that makes Java so fast, because it's adaptive at runtime, it recompiles to native bytecode, but the patterns, the bytecode patterns that it recognizes are the ones in Java and badly written Java. So there is a jet to make it possible for languages to implement their own patterns recognized by the JIT so that it's optimized. So it would allow us to optimize Groovy for the JVM.
I think that would be GR8, and GR8 would be the third JVM internal structure they would then integrate by now.
Well, we have to wrap up. I'd like to thank the panel for their eager discussion, and to you, the audience, for participating as well. Hope you will enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.